Hello students, today we are going to discuss about status of a company secretary, that is unit 9. Earlier class we have discussed about the appointment, qualifications and disqualifications. Now let us understand what is the status of a company secretary in any organization. So before discussing about that, let us understand the word called KMP. What is KMP? Key managerial personnel. Then what is key managerial personnel? The Companies Act 2013. It says that special status of a company secretary has to be given, that as key managerial personnel. So as the Companies Act has been revised in 2013, that says that company secretary is not only an administrator and they can be called as a key managerial personnel of the organization. What is their role then? Okay, we will call them not only company secretary but also KMP. If they have given the name as KMP, what is an extra work they are doing to the organization? What is the vital role they are playing in any organization? So, key managerial personnel play a vital role in implementing important decisions in a company, and hence the future of a company depends on the effectiveness of its key management personnel. Why? Because he is the person, he takes important role in taking decisions, and so that is the reason the future of any company depends upon the effectiveness and the decision making taken by the KMPs. So 2013 Companies Act section 203 and subsection 1 defines KMP as in relation to a company, means KMP means that is key managerial personnel. When it comes to a company, it is called as either managing director or CEO or manager, in their absence a whole time director. Then we will have company secretary, then we will have CFO, that is chief financial officer. So this is the criteria, or this is the how they are having the role one by one. The first place the manager or the CEO, then comes the KMP, that is company secretary, then comes the financial officer. Then what is the role of company secretary? So he will play different roles as a statutory officer, as an administrator, or as a coordinator. So as a statutory officer, what are the role he is playing? As a coordinator, what is the role he is playing? And as an administrative officer, what is the role he is playing? Let us understand in detail. So company secretary as a statutory officer. If you can just look at there, here we have a lot of things. Yes, the company secretary is an officer responsible for various compliances under different acts. Means whatever the compliance that are taking place in the organization, he is responsible according to the law, that is according to the act, and this responsibility has also been increased and has been included in the definition of KMP, and he is liable to punishment by way of imprisonment, fine or otherwise for the violation of the provisions of the Companies Act. So what we are telling, whenever the Companies Act has been revised, actually we were having Company Secretary Act 1980, but the Company Act we were having 1956 Companies Act, that has been revised in 2013, which has changed every rule, and the name also, the designation also has been changed. If any violation takes place, he is punishable as per the law. The act makes it obligatory for the company secretary to sign annual return of the company, to sign financial statements of the company. It is his duty to declare while incorporating a company that all the requirements of the Company of Act has been met within, and the registrar may accept such declaration as a sufficient evidence. So what he has to do, whenever anything takes place in an organization, he has to comply. So he is a person who has to take the compliance as per the law. If he is not taking, he will be punished, and he has to sign on the annual reports, he has to sign on the financial statements, and it is his duty that incorporating a company, he has to take every responsibility, and he has to provide with sufficient evidence to the registrar. Now, apart from that, under the SEBI Regulations Act 2015, The company secretary shall act as the secretary to audit committee in case of a listed company. So, as we all know that every company has to go for audit of their company to file the income tax returns. So, whenever the audit committee comes to their organization, he is the person who has to look after and he has to act and he has to help them in giving every information. And also under the Indian Stamps Act, it is the duty of secretary to see that all the documents such as letter of allotment, share certificates, debentures are issued and duly stamped. So, as per the SAB, he has to act as an audit committee. As per stamp committee, he has to look after all the letters, certificates, debentures, everything are stamped or not. And under the Income Tax Act 1961, he is the principal officer of the company. So, as a company secretary, he will act as a statutory officer. So, these are implied. No one will tell you have to do this. These are implied rules where company secretary has to fulfill. Now, company secretary as a coordinator. So, as a coordinator, what he is going to do? What is his role he is going to play in the organization? We said that he will administer the affairs of the company. Why? Because he is an administrator. So, his key role is to play as an administration and his work is to look after all the affairs of the organizations are being carried clearly. And it is his responsibility to look after all the rules framed by the management to be executed effectively. And he will act as a connecting link. Company secretary will act as a connecting link between the company with that of shareholders, that of society and the government. Then how he is connected? Why? Because company is different, shareholders are different, government is different and society is different. No, he is the one whenever because he is mandatory that he has to sign on annual reports, he has to sign on financial statements which are going to be published in the newspapers. In that case, he will act as a link between the company and the shareholders. Why? Because once he is signed, it means that whatever he approved is correct and appropriate. And he acts a link between the society and the company. He acts a link between the company and the government. And these are all internal roles. Apart from this, he even plays an external role. Then what are the external role? He will try to see that there should not have any discrepancies between the trade unions and the organization, trade and the auditors of the company. So, as a company secretary, as an auditor, that were the responsibilities. Now, what is the role of company secretary as an administrator? So, as an administrator, company secretary has to make a detailed analysis of various activities of the company and decision making machinery in the company and also interdepartmental relationship in the company. The company secretary needs to analyze the financial statements of the company. His consultation with the financial manager of the company has to devise suitable and proper systems of accounting procedure, internal control and internal auditor. So, as a statutory officer we have seen, as a coordinator we have seen. Now, as an administrator, what he is going to do? As an administrator, he is going to take some decisions which are related to the machinery of the company, which are related to interdepartmental transfers or interdepartmental relationships, how it is to be and how it has to be. So, as administrator, the company secretary will play different roles. Now, apart from that, company secretary deals with tax administration of the company. Why? Because see, only based on the chartered accountant we cannot go for the tax filing. Before going for tax filing, it is a duty of the company secretary to act as tax administrator and he should involve in tax planning and proper tax administration for the organization. Why we are calling this? Because see, if we are whatever profits we get and we go on paying tax, we may not be able to having enough and sufficient profit to be kept aside. So, as its company secretary, it's our responsibility, our means company secretary responsibility to take part in tax planning and tax administration. and the company secretary is required to advise and assist the directors on the recruitment and training policies of the company. So, I think you are following it. Why? Because he is playing a different roles in the organization. He is not only looking after the law, he is looking after, he is acting as an SEBI guidelines, stamp duty regulations, and also as dealing with the administration part. In administration, he is playing in tax planning role, that is tax administration, and company secretary is also advised. He always advise and assist the directors for recruiting and training policies that are framed by the company for the benefit of the employees. The secretary has an important role to play in safeguarding the company's properties, including the intellectual property rights of the company. He has to even ensure that all properties are properly maintained and insured, and also maintain a suitable register for each property, which contains relevant limits and relevant information. Further, the secretary has to ensure that the statutory time limits relating to directors and shareholders meetings, payment of dividend and interest are compliant with. Means what he has to do? Not only assisting the directors for training and recruitment policies framing for the company employees, and also it is his responsibility and in safeguarding the company's properties, such as for intellectual property, and for every property they should have properly registered, and each book has to be maintained, and each property has to be insured, and all the documents that are related has to be kept very confidential. So, as an administrator, these are the different roles played by the company secretary. Now, what are the duties of a company secretary? When we talk about duties of a company secretary, so we have different duties. Under that, the first one is to provide guidance to the directors of the company, that is either collectively and individually as they require from time to time with regard to their duties, responsibilities and powers. So, as a company secretary, his foremost duty is to direct the company directors either collectively or individually. From whenever there is a time and whenever there is a discharge of the duties, responsibilities and powers. The second duty of a company secretary: to facilitate the convening of the meeting and attend board, committee and general meetings and maintain the minutes of those meetings. So, he has to convene the meetings and they have to attend with the board of directors, committee and general meetings, and also maintain minutes of those meetings. Whatever they attended, that has to be maintained in a book, that is called minutes. The third duty: to obtain approvals from the board, the government and such authorities as required by the act. So, whenever they need some approvals from the board or government and from such all authorities, it is his duty to look after that. And also to assist the board in ensuring good corporate governance, and it is the duty of the company secretary to ensure good corporate governance. Next, to issue share certificates, debenture certificates and any other certified documents to be given on behalf of the company. So, whenever the company has to give the share certificates or debentures, it is the duty of the company secretary to give on behalf of the company. Next one, in the event of winding up of a company, he is to verify the statements to be submitted to the liquidator. So, whenever the company goes into liquidation or it's winding up, at that time, whatever the statements that are there or that has to be submitted to the liquidator, it is the responsibility of the company secretary to submit all those documents in the event of winding up of a company. And also it is a duty of the company secretary to supervise timely filing of tax returns with income tax authorities, because some person should be there in the organization to check it whether the company has been done income tax file returns or done. Then here who is responsible? So, that is company secretary. It is his duty to look after whether the company has filed the income tax returns on time or not. And also it is a duty of company secretary to ensure that all legal documents of company are affixed with stamp for the requisite amounts. So, whenever there is a legal documents, they will have certain value of amount bond papers that are done according to that or not. That is the duty of the company secretary to look after that. And also, as a chief officer of the organization, he is expected to protect the interest of shareholders, and in this regard he acts as a connecting link between the company, its directors and shareholders. And it is the work to develop a project to develop and nourish the image of the company to the outside world. So, the main work of company secretary is what? To develop, to project, means to outsiders as if the company is working, means good image has to be created in the market about the company. Some other duties has been assigned by the board of directors from time to time. So, whenever there is a time, if the whatever the rules duties are being assigned, that has to be implemented by the company secretary. Next we have is rights and powers of a company secretary. So, that was the duties. Now, we will talk about rights and powers. So, when you talk about rights and powers of a company secretary, the foremost right comes to the company secretary he has the right to supervise and control the secretarial department of a company. So, it is the foremost right is that he has to supervise, always he has to supervise and have control about that department, and he is having the right to sign the documents as a principal offer of the company within the meaning of the Companies Act. So, whenever normally earlier Companies Act, there is used to be director or the managing director who is to sign on behalf of the organization, but now company secretary can sign all the documents by giving principal offer with the meaning of the Companies Act. Secretary has a right to issue share certificate of the company. Even the company secretary has right to issue the shares certificate of the company. Sometimes board of directors may delegate some of their powers to company secretary. Accordingly, he can enter into an agreement on behalf of the director. So, sometimes it is like we call power of attorney, yes. So, that will be given to the company secretary. So, on behalf of the company secretary will enter into the contracts with outsiders on behalf of the company, and also has the right to indemnified by the company for any loss suffered by him while discharging his official duties. So, if there is a loss, that all has to be discharged by the company secretary whenever he is discharging his duties. Now, apart from this, we have even some other liabilities of company secretary. So, that were the rights and powers of a company secretary. Now, we talk about liabilities of a company secretary. Let us see, under that we have two types, that is contractual and the other one is statutory. So, what are the liabilities? Statutory liabilities and contractual liabilities. Let us understand what are contractual liabilities, in what way the company is doing. So, a company secretary is expected to perform his duties with reasonable care and skill. He is liable to company for damages caused by his willful misconduct or neglect of duties. So, whenever a company secretary is expected to perform certain duties and is because of his not performing properly, if any damages takes place or either any willful or willingly doing any mistakes or neglecting his duties, at that time according to his contract it will be mentioned, and is personally liable for any breach of authority and need to pay damages to the company of any such breach. So, if he is personally making any breach of authority by misusing his authority, in that case he has to pay damages to the organization in the form of cash. Next, he is restrained from disclosing confidential information relating to the affairs of the company. If he is found guilty, he is served as an injunction order by the court. Means, as a company secretary, he is an administrator who is looking after total organization. So, whatever the confidential information is there, he should not give to some other. If it is found that he has done something wrong, in that case injunction order will be brought from the court and he will be punished. Next, he stands in a fiduciary position to the company, and if he makes any secret profit, he is liable to surrender such secret profit to the company. See, as we all know that we will watch in movies and TV serials that the person works in an organization and without knowing the organization, slowly from side he will try to make some other contractual agreements with some others and making some personal profits. In that case, If that is found, every amount has to be surrendered to the company, whatever secretly he made that profit. He is also liable to indemnify the company or a third party for the loss suffered by them on account of his fraudulent behavior. See, for example, the company or the third party, the other organization has suffered any loss because of the behavior of the company secretary. In that case, also he has to pay that loss to the organization. Next, that were contractual liabilities. Now, look at the statutory liabilities. Default in filing a written allotment. Whenever he is unable to file a written allotment, in that case he has to discontinue, and a fine of 1000 rupees per day will be charged till 1 lakh rupees. Next, default in delivering share certificate, debenture certificate, means if he fail to deliver the share certificate or debenture certificate to their debenture holders or shareholders, in that case also there will be a fine of 5000 rupees which will extend to 5 lakhs rupees. Next, default in filing annual returns. If he is not filing the annual returns on time, fine up to rupees 50,000 which will extend to 5 lakhs, and if the default continues, that is also going to extend it. Next, default in laying down profit and loss account and balance sheet at the annual general meeting. So, whenever there is an annual general meeting, if the company secretary is not able to provide or present the annual statements or the balance sheet or profit and loss account, in that case also 50,000 or imprisonment for 1 year or both. So, they will be punished, they will be put into jail for the period for 1 year or 50,000, or both may be charged. Failure to give due notice on board meetings. Board meeting notice has to be given to the shareholders. If it is not given, fine will be there up to 25,000 rupees. Responsibilities of company secretary with regard to various meetings. So, there are different meetings that will be taken place in the organization. If you can just look at here, we have board meetings and general meetings. So, whenever this meetings takes place, what are his responsibilities? Let us look at that. The first we will talk about board meetings. Under board meetings, according to Companies Act 2013, sections 173, the meetings of the board has to be done efficiently and effectively without any disturbance. Smooth functioning of the board meetings has to be conducted. If it is not conducted, yes, he has to include it before what happened, after what happened, and all minutes of the meetings have to be reported. Next, duties and responsibilities before the commencement of meeting. So, we said board meetings are there. So, as before, what are his duties? Let us understand. So, before commencement of board meeting, it is his responsibility to ensure that the board meetings are duly convened and constituted, and that the provisions of the company's articles of association and standing orders are complied with during the course of conduct of meeting. So, this is the first foremost, means before conducting any meeting, this is the primary responsibility of a company secretary to look after that, whether is it conducted, is it there in our provisions of companies or not, is it mentioned in articles of association or not, or do we have any standing orders or not, that all has to be looked after. Next, before the commencement of board of meetings, it is a primary duty of the company secretary to give that not less than 7 days. So, not less than 7 days notice in writing has to be given to every director. Before not less than 7 days, a notice has to be given to every directors to his registered address, the company, and notice has to be sent either by electronic means or through post. And in case any urgent or relates to urgent business, it is a duty of secretary to make at least one independent director, if any, shall be present. If it is a mandatory meeting and directors are not available at that meeting, at least one director has to be attend that meeting. It is a duty of company secretary to summon meeting of the board and based on the requisition of a director. Now, apart from this, in case first board meeting, secretary should ensure that notice mentions the facts, and it is a duty of company secretary to enclose the agenda. And means it, from all this we can conclude that whatever the meeting before is going to decide, he has to clearly, we has to send a notice to directors, if all not at least one, and if it is one is attending, whether what are the minutes he is going to do and what is the agenda they are going to do, and what are the responsibilities, and whether he has contacted, he requested all the directors or not, that all has to be taken into consideration. And if any resolutions are to be proposed in the board of meetings, so it's a duty of secretary, whatever the resolutions or the discussion they are going to discuss, that has to be circulated among all the directors of the company, and it is his responsibility to look after all the documents that are needed for the discussion in the meeting are ready, and then is go for the welcoming of the director, and also then he has to obtain the signature for the attendance register. Now, duties and responsibilities during the meeting, that is before the meeting. Now, what is during the meeting, what are his duties and responsibilities? Quorum, quorum means minimum 1/3 of total strength. For example, it means at least 2 directors, whichever is higher, either 1/3 or 2 directors as per section 174, whichever is higher, they have to attend the meeting. And election of chairman of the meeting from the directors among present will be selected, and chairman will conduct the meeting as per agenda, and it is a responsibility to take notes of the proceedings whatever they have discussed, and even he has to mention date, time and place of the next board meeting also. This is during the meeting. Next, duty and responsibilities after the meeting. So, after the meeting what they have to do? So, whatever the meeting is over, it is a responsibility of secretary to prepare a draft, and that has to be submitted to the chairman of the meeting and also the managing director of the meeting. And it is a duty to send minutes to all the directors. Means when you send the minutes, it means that okay, this has happened, okay, these all decisions have been taken, that all will be coming to the every director. And also they have to contact every director, and he has to finalize, is it okay, he has to take the approval from all the directors, and this book has to be duly signed by the chairman, and ensure that minutes are entered within 30 days of conclusion. Means whatever the agenda or the resolution they have taken in that meeting, that has to be put into the implementation part. The implementation part will take place when within the 30 days of the conclusion of that meeting. So, this is what statutory meeting, before meeting, during the meeting and after the meeting. Next, general meetings. So, that are statutory meeting, these are general meetings. In general meetings also this has to be conducted. To conduct this, we have some approval has to be taken, and one person has to take part in that meeting, and board of directors, and the audit report should be must be ready for the meeting. Next, so here also we have before general meeting what all duties he has to do, during the meeting what all the duties and responsibilities he has to do, after the meeting what are his duties and responsibilities. Let us understand that. So, before the meeting, he has to look after whether all annual accounts of the company have been prepared, audited and certified. By whom? By the auditor. Then only he has to go. So, these are pre-preparations we call. Okay. To draft the annual report of the director in consultation with chairman, he has to do that, and to consider and discuss the report of the audit committee, and also it is responsibility to fix the time, date and place for the annual general meeting, and also approve the draft notice, and also get authorization for the issue of notice for the meeting. And it is his responsibility to fix all the meetings, countersign has to be done. So, what he has to do during the meeting? Duties and responsibilities at the general meeting. So, at that place what are his duties? Let us understand. So, he has to take admission card for all members at the entrance, and at the entrance only they have to take attendance. Why? Because attendance register has to be maintained, attendance has to be recorded, and if so desired chairman, it is a duty of secretary to read the whatever notice of the meeting in the meeting itself, and also to ascertain quorum. Quorum means, I say now, 1/3 of directors should mandatory present, and also letter of apologies means there may be, it is not possible that all directors can attend the meeting. Yes, in that case whatever the apologies letter have been sent, that has to be read with the permission of chairman, and the secretary is expected to help the chairman to conduct the meeting, taking poll, conduct meeting, record verbatim, and whatever resolutions are passed, that all has to be recorded and should be approved and signed by the chairman. And it is a responsibility of him to provide chairman all information, and minutes book has to be maintained containing minutes of the previous annual general meeting. He should maintain and help the ascertaining the quorum. Okay. So, next, after the general meeting, what is going to take place? So, after the general meeting, whatever the resolution or proceedings have been taken place, that has to be recorded and it has to be signed by the chairman as well as the third 30 days of the meeting. Within 30 days, it has to be signed, and to send an intimation or appointment or reappointment of directors within 30 days, and to file special resolutions. And he has to present all balance sheet, profit and loss account and reports of the directors and notices given to them, and he has to even ensure the deposit of dividend distribution tax and also RBI, and separate book has to be maintained. This all has to be maintained after the meeting. Next comes other functions of company secretary. So, apart from all this, even he will do the secretarial works, he will discharge his duties and functions which are very important for the organization, and he will even see to that whether taxes are paid, fees, duties are paid on time or not, and whether he will assist the board in formulating various corporate social responsibility policies and also the time duties, and he will look after that whether he is having he will act as a liaison between the board and shareholders. So, compliances, here as I said, he also acts as a compliance officer. So, we will take all these are all different things: meeting of board directors, disclosure of interest by directors. You can just look at your filing of annual. So, this all he will look after. It is his responsibility to look after all these things. Compliance department. So, he is the head of the compliance department. He will identify and he will try to control all these things. He will monitor, he resolve whatever problems comes. He also acts as an advisory. You can just look at your monitoring, deduction, resolution, advisory, and you will look after and carry the various functions that takes place. So, compliance identification, compliance ownership, awareness, reporting, his duty to carry on all these activities. So, secretarial audit, he will do the audit of the total organization, public company, whether he is having paid up capital or turnover of 250 crores, objectives, his needs, tenure. So, these all he look after about the secretarial, means he will even audit the company by this thing. So, I hope you all have understood what is the status of a secretary, company secretary in any organization. Yes, thank you all.